Quick, tell me, how many accents can you do on the spot? Actually, let's make it simpler. How many languages can you speak? Or how many languages can you understand? Interesting, isn't it? You're probably wondering, what does this have to do with having a transnational identity or transnationalism? Well, let me tell you. Hi, welcome back. And before we start this episode, I'm going to start by trying to guess your answers from before the intro started. So I'm going to guess obviously English because you can understand what I'm saying, or you're reading the subtitles, but in that case, then I'm going to say Mandarin, French, Spanish, and Hindu. Yeah. Do you know why I guessed those? Those are top 5 of the most spoken languages in the world, and as a traveler, migrant, or transnational individual such as yourself, you may have known that. But if you don't worry, because we're going to talk all about it in this episode. So you meet someone for the first time verbally, and of course you're going to understand what they're going to say, and if you understand what they're going to say, that means you understand the language, then you respond accordingly. Normal interaction. But what if they sound just slightly different? You understand what they're saying, yeah, but they have an accent or you have an accent. And that's when that dreaded question comes through. Where are you from? We've already kind of addressed why that dreaded question is important to the transnational experience and why it is such a major conversation. But that is where language and accents gets into the narrative of transnationalism. So as usual, we're going to have our volunteers and our experts joining us in this really exciting discussion. And of course, me, Tanya Masari, on specifically language and accents amongst transnational individuals. Several articles have been written on accents and languages, especially amongst migrants in different countries. The Highbrow magazine spoke on how having an accent can make you feel genuinely foreign, which, as we've already established, is a predominant problem regarding having a transnational identity. Looking different can have an effect on how people treat you, but sounding different equally has the same effect by adding a little sprinkle of foreign to the mix. Now, obviously, let's say you're going to a country that is predominantly English speaking, and you as an English speaker obviously understand what's going on, but then you have an accent. Where does this accent actually come from?
Well, in a nutshell, if we look at research by Claudia and Giovanna here, foreign accents reflect our identities and origin. You can read the rest, but I think it comes from our foster country. Let's hear what our experts say about this.
So, my name is Dr. Matthew Nyakano. I'm a Zimbabwean academic based in England. So, you will find out that most transnational communities, in most cases, when they start to complain about some of the things, some challenges, is their accent. So, because I've spoken in a certain accent, certain people might actually, try just to tell you that, well, I'm not understanding this person, or I'm not, you see, and it has been a challenge, apparently. And people have struggled or have tried to actually get to a standard where they would be told, okay, yes, I can understand this. So in the process, you lose your originality. So because this comes with originality, how do I speak this language? Apparently, this is not my language. I've got another language where I have a very beautiful accent.
Okay, now here's a statement that you and I probably relate to. You know, the statement they asked you or told you before you left your country of origin, the one your family says and you have to awkwardly smile and give a little shrug, act like it's not weird that they just said that to you. The New York Times couldn't have said it better themselves. Don't lose your accent. How on earth am I losing my accent? Now, for people who know me, they probably know that the accent story is a point of contention. In fact, that is what triggered my interest towards transnationalism and transnational identity. So the secret is out. This is probably my favorite episode. But let's hear what the participants have to say. Do you think you have an accent? Do you think you sound different? Or maybe, I don't know, you just feel like you sound like everyone else. Did your accent actually change?
I don't sound Zimbabwe, but usually people will be like, "Are you Zimbabwean? Are you sure you're Zimbabwean?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Yeah, no, you don't sound Zimbabwean. You sound like you just from here.
So when I speak English, I sound like a different person. When I speak my mother tongue, Shona, I sound like a different person. But here, trying to learn Nyanja, it's not hard. Maybe I just haven't been applying myself. But I have been told that when I do speak or when I say things in the local language, it sounds foreign. Like they can easily tell that I'm not from this country. So for some things, I've had to adopt an accent. So I observe how people in this country speak, how they speak to each other, how they interact, or how they just like carry themselves on a day-to-day basis. Even if it's in English, they have the same accent for English and Nyanja. So I've had to adopt an accent, and it's only when I'm speaking Nyanja and when I'm probably distracted.
Depending on where I am, like here where we stay, it's almost like Kasi, the hood. So predominantly, I would automatically turn to Zulu, and I will try and kind of mimic the Zulu accent so that it's not a dead giveaway that I don't know how to speak it. And if I'm out there in malls or wherever, it just depends on where I am. But most of the time, I never sound Zimbabwean. Even when I speak Shona, people tell me don't speak Shona because it doesn't sound like it.
Hello, just switching up the view for you. Same sweater, but different hair and different time. But I liked doing that little video to camera in the previous episode, so I thought I'll do it now. So I know I mentioned that this is my favorite episode. Let me specify why. Accents for me have always been a personal thing. And that's predominantly because I grew up in Zimbabwe, obviously, but I went to schools that encouraged me to speak in English and taught me, and my parents bought me a lot of content that was British leaning. So because of that, I basically developed an accent on my own, which happens all the time. It's like the Bluey and Peppa Pig phenomenon. And then we also travel to a bunch of other countries, like I mentioned. So now when I tried to start learning to speak in Shona, my accent came out like this. And you can imagine how weird that sounded. So I got a lot of criticism because of it. And I started moving away from the Shona language, similar to what my participants are saying. So which is why I'm very excited to navigate this. And that is why I got interested in transnationalism in the first place.
We've kind of covered accents and where they come from. And our participants and experts show that accents can be determined by our languages and the linguistic practices that we do take on or we learn as we are learning certain languages. It can be a little complicated, but let's move a little bit more into the elites. You know, the elites, the one that can speak more than one language. I'm sure you know a few of those. So I speak 2 languages fluently, and I do understand some languages. But how about you? How many languages do you speak?
Hi! My name is Sumi, technically. It's Similolua, short for Similolua. I'm Yoruba, so I'm Nigerian in origin. I live in Joburg, which is where I consider home. So English, first language. Yoruba is my home/native language. I understand perfectly. I can speak it, but I just really don't because I grew up responding in English. And the older I get, I also get like self-conscious about my pronunciation again because Yoruba is like a very tonal language. And so I'm very nervous to mess it up. But also it just doesn't feel natural to converse in Yoruba, especially with like older people.
Myself, it's Shona English. I understand Zulu. I understand Setswana. I understand a little bit of Xhosa, but I don't speak it. Like Setswana and Zulu, I can speak.
My mom can speak Irish. She's very good at languages. She can speak like 5 languages. And she made an effort to really learn it when she was younger. And then in England, she refused to teach it to me. Not refused, but she liked that she could speak to her family friend Auntie Deirdre, who was another Irish immigrant woman living in England. So they liked that they could discuss things in Irish and no one would know what they were talking about. So they kind of refused to teach me and my family friends who were her kids how to speak Irish so they could like gossip.
Speak. Can I say 2? I don't know if that's accurate. I'd say 3. Our survey has shown that out of the 50 of our survey participants altogether, they all speak a total of 16 languages, mainly English, Swahili, and French. One explanation is the theory of the mother tongue. So the theory stands that you learn how to speak from your mother. Therefore, you speak in your mother's tongue. So the language that was spoken in your house or where you were raised. So I grew up in a Shona house, so I learned how to speak Shona from my parents, which means that is my mother tongue. But then there's another thing called the first language, which is different from the mother tongue, or sometimes similar. Confusing, I know, but I'll explain. The mother tongue, again, as we had said, that is the language that you're taught by your mother. Your first language is the language that you're most comfortable speaking in. Those are 2 different things.
Language is a difficult discussion because I feel like for me, when you grow up and you don't know your mother tongue, it almost disconnects you from your culture, you know? So for me, I can understand Shona. Apparently it's called receptive bilingualism, when you can understand the language, but your ability to respond is kind of hindered. So for me, I think as someone who grew up in South Africa and I wasn't around a lot of Shona speakers, when I do go back home, I feel very disconnected in the sense that sometimes, you know, language does, you know, count for something. And sometimes I feel like I don't blend in, or I can't appreciate certain aspects of things because I'm not able to fully immerse myself within the language.
So maybe speaking to the South African context, so I teach, right? So sometimes there's that need for one to communicate in a language that is relatable to the students that you're teaching. But the limits are that I can't speak the language. So there's usually that language barrier. And also when students are trying to articulate some of these concepts from their own mother tongue, there are language barriers. So you have to rely on somebody else who can understand isiXhosa to be able to interpret.
Now we've established how language can be developed. And we've also gotten into how accents can come from languages and how those can counter-relate to each other when it comes to linguistics, especially amongst transnationals. But now that we understand that, I want to get into how this can specifically affect transnational individuals.
So firstly, there's the pressure that comes with being a partly Thai South African, the pressure to speak Thai, right? If I was completely white, then I would just be monolingual and nobody would question that. But because my dad is Thai and because I'm half Thai, I'm expected to speak it. There's this kind of social pressure to be able to speak Thai, to be Thai culturally, which I'm not really. Like I'm kind of, but not really. And if you asked me and put me in a room of Thai people to speak Thai, I wouldn't be able to, and there's this cultural disconnect over there. But I feel like an enthusiastic foreigner if I'm in Thailand. Yeah, because I want to learn the language. I have a very good reason to do so. And I've taught myself a certain amount of it because I just want that for me. But if I were to actually try to speak seriously, I wouldn't be able to.
So I think definitely because I actually have a childhood trauma to tell. There was a time when, you know, tennis club, you know, on a Saturday, you know, we're doing the things. And then I tried to say something in Shona and it just came out so incorrectly. My older brother and my grandfather ran with it. The whole Saturday I was just being made fun of, right? And I think, you know, because I remember I was a very small child then. I think that just played on the psyche because ever since then I was like, I'm not going to try if you guys are going to make fun of me, because at the end of the day, language is something that you need to practice.
Actually, the most recent example was my landlord came over to fix something in my place and I was the only one there, my roommate wasn't there. And he came with his wife and the person that was fixing something. So I was talking to her and I was like, oh yeah, I'm from Zim too, I'm from Harare. And then she was like, oh, and then I was like, yeah, I can. And I responded and we started speaking. And then halfway through again, like she started speaking English. And I was like, okay. And then she said something like in the beginning of the conversation, she's like, no, you can't speak it. Like, even listening to how you can talk, like, you can't speak it. And I'm just like, okay. Because when I was in Zim earlier this year, I went to the shops with my aunt, and I went to the till and I paid for things. And then I was just conversating with the person, and they were like, oh, how long have you been in Zim? And I was like, my whole life. What do you mean? Oh, how long have you been speaking Shona? And I was like, my whole life. And he's like, oh, it doesn't sound like it. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went back and I spoke to my aunt, and I was like, oh yeah, this is what he said. And then she was like, okay, because you have an accent, you don't hear it, but you do have an accent when you speak Shona. So I think, and I use that with my landlord's wife as an excuse kind of for why I don't speak as well as her. Because I was like, oh no, I've been here for a while, so my accent is different, that's why da-da-da-da-da. So yeah.
In the previous episode, we spoke about sociality, but try to imagine how difficult it would be to make friends and to socialize when you can't even speak the same language as the people around you. But some people have found a solution around that. Maybe they found a nice, calm place where they can slowly learn the language. Some people have taken it upon themselves to get lessons and to actually practice the language. And some people have tried to learn the local lingo, which is how I learn languages where I go. But sometimes that just won't cut it because your accent still sounds different. But standing out might not always be a bad thing. Maybe it'll welcome interest, maybe it'll welcome other people to learn about you, or for you to learn about a different culture. And that's the interesting thing about language and all the transnationalism topics that we're covering. They all kind of connect to each other, because especially if you have an expressive language such as Shona, you will find that most of our statements, most of our phrases are connected to cultural practices, such as in my language, we have which are kind of like mini stories or phrases that I used to kind of teach children and lead the way. And those are specifically in Shona, in my mother tongue. Those are also linked to our cultural beliefs. This can even go beyond culture, as in certain religious practices, the accent is important, as an article states that in the Catholic Church, there's some discriminations that may be faced by people with different accents and who speak different languages.
Even if they were going to the traditional churches like Presbyterian, Catholic, or Baptist, and they come here, the accent is different. They can't understand. It takes a while to be able to understand a colored accent or even an Afrikaner accent. So because of that, they gravitate to a church that is being pastored by an African, where they can understand the accent, where they can actually be part of it and are welcome. So even if they do not have those religious networks, they gravitate to a place where they recognize somebody that will speak the language that they will understand.
So as you can see, language does link directly to culture, religion, and beliefs, which I think is a very important and a major conversation that we're going to get into in the next episode. See you there.